Mira owned a small garage on the edge of town. It was not big or modern, but it was her pride. The walls were lined with shelves of tools and parts she had collected over the years. The concrete floor had stains from oil and grease, but she never minded. To her, it was a place of hard work and honesty. She repaired cars and trucks for neighbors, farmers, and travelers passing through. People trusted her because she was fair and never lied about what was needed. One morning, while she was cleaning her workbench, an old pickup rolled into the yard. The truck was faded blue, its paint chipped, and rust showed across the sides. The sound of the engine was weak, coughing as it reached the garage door. Mira set her rag aside and walked out to meet the driver. The man who stepped out was older, his hair gray under a cap. His steps were careful, as if his back hurt, but his eyes were steady and kind. He gave Mira a small nod. "Morning. Name's Tom. Think you can take a look at her?" Mira smiled. "Sure, what seems to be the problem?" Tom glanced at the truck with a faint sadness. "She doesn't run like she used to. I bought her when I came back from service years ago. Drove this truck across states, carried my family, hauled supplies. She's been with me through everything. I'd like to keep her going if I can." Mira popped the hood and leaned in. The engine told a clear story. Belts were frayed, the carburetor was dirty, and several parts were close to failing. She sighed softly. Repairing this truck would not be simple. The parts alone would cost a lot. Tom watched her face and seemed to read her thoughts. "If it's too much, just let me know. I don't have much to spare these days." Mira stood for a moment thinking. She had bills to pay and parts to order. But she also saw the way Tom looked at the truck. It was more than metal to him. It was memory and loyalty. She wiped her hands and gave him a steady look. "Don't worry about the cost," she said. "I'll take care of it." Tom frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" "I mean it's free. I'll repair it, no charge." Tom shook his head. "I can't let you do that. You don't even know me." Mira's smile was gentle. "You served this country. This truck is part of your life. Let me do this as a thank you." "It's the least I can do." For a moment, Tom stood silent. His lips pressed together and his eyes grew damp, though he quickly blinked them clear. "That's very kind. I don't know how to thank you." "Come back in a few days," Mira said. "She'll be ready." Tom placed his hand on the hood as if it were a living thing, then gave Mira a firm nod before walking away. The next hours turned into days as Mira worked late into the night. She ordered new belts and a fuel pump from her savings. She cleaned the carburetor until it shined, replaced worn plugs and patched spots of rust along the frame. She even repaired the radio so music could play again, and she polished the wheel until it gleamed. Each small repair brought the truck closer to life. By the third night, she slid behind the wheel, turned the key, and listened. The truck came alive with a smooth, steady rumble. Mira smiled to herself. It was as if the old machine was breathing again. When Tom returned to the garage, his eyes widened. The dents were still there, but the truck looked proud again. Mira handed him the keys with a grin. "It's yours, good as new." Tom climbed in, turned the key, and listened to the healthy sound of the engine. His face softened. He looked at Mira with deep respect. "I will never forget this." "Thank you." "You already thanked me," she said. "Just drive her and keep her moving." Tom nodded slowly, then drove away, the sound of the truck echoing strong down the road. Mira watched until he disappeared beyond the curve. She thought the story had ended, but she was wrong. A week later, a flatbed trailer rumbled into her yard. On it sat something she never expected, and a letter taped to the side. The morning sun rose over the quiet town, painting the sky in soft orange light. Mira unlocked her garage doors and prepared for another day of work. She expected the usual cars, maybe a tractor from the nearby farms, but instead she heard the heavy sound of a diesel engine outside. When she stepped out, she froze in surprise. A flatbed truck had pulled into her yard. On the back sat a large wooden crate strapped tight with chains. Beside it was an envelope taped neatly to the side. The driver of the flatbed climbed down, tipped his hat, and said, "Delivery for Mira." Mira frowned. "I didn't order anything." The driver shrugged. "Says here it's paid for already. My job is just to drop it off." He handed her a clipboard to sign. Still puzzled, Mira signed the paper and watched as the driver unhooked the chains and left the crate near her garage doors. The flatbed rumbled away, leaving her standing alone with the mysterious delivery. She reached for the envelope, tore it open, and unfolded the letter inside. Her eyes moved over the neat handwriting. "Dear Mira, you gave more than a repair. You gave respect and kindness. I wanted to thank you in a way that lasts. This is not payment. It is a gift. From one life of service to another life of honesty. I hope it helps your garage and your future. With respect, Tom." Mira's hands trembled slightly as she held the letter. She had repaired his truck out of gratitude, never expecting anything in return. What could he have sent her in such a large crate? With effort, she pried the top boards loose. Inside, carefully packed, sat an engine block, polished and shining like new. Alongside it were boxes filled with high-quality tools, brand new wrenches, ratchets, torque sets, and even diagnostic equipment she could never afford on her own. At the bottom lay a smaller crate filled with spare parts for pickups and cars, each labeled and organized. For a long moment, Mira simply stared. Her chest felt tight and she sat back on her heels. This was more than she ever dreamed of owning. Her old tools had been passed down from her father, many of them worn and dull. These were sharp, precise, and modern. They would make her work faster and easier. She read the letter again and whispered, "Tom, you didn't have to do this." Though she said it aloud, she knew he would not hear. Yet in her heart she felt the weight of his thanks. He had chosen a gift that spoke directly to her life, something she would use every day. Mira worked the rest of the day rearranging her garage. She cleared shelves, set up the new tools, and carefully placed the engine block on a stand. She polished the floor near the front where she wanted customers to see it, a symbol of what her small shop could now achieve. Each step filled her with both excitement and humility. By evening, the garage looked different. It still carried the warmth of her father's old place, but now it had a spark of new life. She sat on a stool, holding the letter one last time before slipping it into her desk drawer. That night, as she locked the doors, she noticed something. Across the street, two men were staring at her garage, whispering to each other. She thought little of it at first, assuming they were just curious about the delivery, but as she walked home under the fading sunset, she could not shake the feeling that her life had quietly shifted. The next few days brought more customers. Word spread about Mira's kindness toward Tom, the veteran with the old truck. Farmers brought tractors for repairs, mothers brought family cars, and travelers stopped by with small issues. They all wanted to support her, not just because of her skill, but because of her heart. Mira worked long hours, but she did it with energy she had not felt in years. Every time she reached for one of the new tools or glanced at the shining engine block, she remembered Tom's gratitude. Yet at the back of her mind, she also remembered the two men who had been watching her garage. She had no reason to fear them, but something about their quiet attention lingered like a shadow. Mira told herself not to worry. She focused on her customers and her repairs. Still, she knew deep down that gifts this large often carried ripples, and life rarely stayed simple for long. And she was right. Because before the week was over, another unexpected visitor arrived at her garage, carrying questions she did not yet know how to answer. The following Thursday morning, Mira opened her garage early as usual. The air was cool and the sun had just begun to rise. She enjoyed the quiet before customers arrived, a short time when the world felt calm. She set her coffee mug on the workbench and checked her schedule. 2 tire changes and a tractor repair were planned for the day. She felt ready. The sound of steady footsteps on the gravel broke her routine. She turned to see a man in a uniform approaching. His shirt carried a small-town police badge and his hat shaded sharp eyes. He was not angry, but his expression was serious. "Morning, ma'am," he said politely. "Name's Officer Dale. Mind if I ask you a few questions?" Mira set down her mug. "Of course. What's this about?" Dale glanced at the garage yard. "I hear you repaired a veteran's truck for free last week. That true?" Mira nodded. "Yes, his name's Tom. He's a kind man." "Why?" The officer folded his arms. Word about it spread fast. Folks talk when someone shows that much generosity. But there's something else. Tom has been receiving attention lately, and not all of it good. Mira tilted her head, puzzled. "What do you mean?" "Tom has friends, but he also has people who watch him for other reasons. He kept to himself for years after his service, but some people are curious about what he knows or what he might still have. The men across the street the other night, did you notice them?" Mira remembered clearly. "Yes, I did. I thought they were just strangers." The officer's tone grew firmer. "They're not from here. I believe they were keeping an eye on your garage. Could be curiosity. Could be something else. Did Tom leave you anything besides that letter and crate?" Mira hesitated. The memory of the tools, engine block, and parts filled her mind. They were valuable, but to her they were only for work. She decided honesty was best. He sent me new tools and parts for the garage. That's all. Dale studied her face, then nodded. That might be enough. Good tools cost plenty. Some folks might think there's more. Mira crossed her arms. I never asked for any of it. I just wanted to help him. I believe you, Dale said calmly. But generosity sometimes draws unwanted attention. If you notice anyone hanging around again, call me right away. She nodded slowly, feeling the weight of his warning. I will. After Dale left, Mira stood in silence, her thoughts heavy. She had only wanted to repair a truck, to give something back to a man who had given years of his life in service. Now she realized her action had started a chain of events she did not fully understand. Later that afternoon, a farmer named Bill brought his tractor in. As she worked, Mira forced herself to focus on bolts and gears. She told herself not to worry, but she kept glancing at the street through the open garage door. Each time she expected to see someone watching. When evening came, Mira closed the garage and walked home with her tool bag over her shoulder. The streets were quiet, but she noticed a car parked across from her house. Its windows were tinted and it did not belong to anyone she knew. She quickened her steps, entered her house, and locked the door. Inside, she sat at the kitchen table, staring at her hands. She thought of Tom's letter and the crate that had changed everything. Gratitude had turned into suspicion, and kindness had drawn strangers near. The next morning, she returned to the garage, determined not to let fear rule her. Customers came in steady numbers. A mother with a minivan, a young man with a motorbike, an old couple needing new tires. Each one thanked her warmly, and their trust gave her courage. By midday, as Mira wiped grease from her hands, she heard the familiar rumble of the old blue pickup. Tom's truck pulled into the yard, shining and strong. Her heart lifted when she saw him step out. He moved slowly but with purpose, and his eyes lit up when he spotted her. Mira, he said warmly, how's the shop? Busy, she replied with a small smile. Your gift made a big difference. But I need to talk to you. Strange things have been happening. Tom's smile faded as he listened. His expression grew serious. I should have known. I didn't mean to bring trouble your way. But if someone is watching, then maybe it's time I told you the truth about why that truck and my past matter more than you realize. Mira stared at him, waiting. She knew his words were about to open a new part of the story, one she had not expected. The air around the garage felt heavy as Tom leaned against the hood of his truck. Mira stood close, her hands still stained with grease, waiting for him to explain. The sound of tools clinking inside the shop seemed distant. Tom took a deep breath before speaking. When I served years ago, I was not just driving supplies or guarding posts. I worked on a special transport team. We moved equipment that was valuable, sometimes secret. One of those trips changed my life. Mira listened quietly. His voice was steady, but his eyes carried weight, as if he had carried this story for far too long. We were moving a crate, Tom continued. It was heavy, locked, and no one told us much about what was inside. Orders were to guard it with our lives. I never saw what it was, but I knew it was important. That night, our convoy was attacked. Chaos broke out, and in the confusion, I drove my truck through fire and mud to get that crate out safely. When it was over, higher officers told me I had saved something worth more than I could imagine. They never said what, and I never asked. But from that day, I felt eyes on me. Some friendly, some not, Mira frowned. And the truck you brought me to fix, that was the same one? Tom nodded slowly. Yes, this old pickup carried that crate through danger. I thought it was just a machine, but it became a symbol. Some folks call it lucky. Others think it still hides secrets. I kept it all these years, not because of money or mystery, but because it reminded me of my brothers in service and what we endured. Mira crossed her arms, her mind racing. So the men watching the garage might think you still have that crate or something connected to it. Exactly, Tom said. But I never kept anything. Only the truck. Still, people believe stories, and sometimes stories are enough to bring trouble. For a long moment, silence hung between them. Mira looked at the tools Tom had gifted her, the shining engine block inside the garage, and the new customers who had come since the story spread. She had stepped into something bigger than she realized. Finally, Mira asked, "Why tell me now?" Tom's expression softened. "Because you deserve to know. I never wanted to put you at risk. You helped me out of kindness, and I owe you honesty. If those men return, it won't be by accident. They're searching, and they think I left something here." Mira felt a chill at his words, but she straightened her shoulders. "Then we'll face it. I won't let anyone scare me from doing what's right." Tom gave her a small smile. "You remind me of soldiers I once knew. Brave even when the odds looked hard." Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of a car pulling into the yard. A young man stepped out with a broken bicycle tire in his hands. Mira quickly pushed her thoughts aside and greeted him. She worked on the bike while Tom waited nearby. To anyone passing by, it looked like a normal day at the garage, but underneath, tension sat like a shadow. When the young man left, Tom spoke again. "I'll stay in town for a while. Maybe keep watch near your garage. If those men come back, they'll find me ready." Mira nodded. "We'll handle it together." That night, Mira locked the garage carefully. She walked home with Tom beside her, the old blue pickup rumbling along the road. For the first time, she noticed how the truck seemed more than just steel and wheels. It carried stories, memories, and secrets that refused to fade. As they neared her house, Tom slowed his truck. "Mira, I need you to promise something. If trouble comes and I'm not there, don't try to fight it alone. Call Officer Dale. Trust him." She gave a firm nod. "I promise." Tom drove off, leaving her under the pale light of the moon. Mira entered her house, but she could not sleep easily. She kept hearing his words about the convoy, the crate, and the attack years ago. She thought of the letter he had sent, and the tools in her garage. Gratitude had brought light to her life, but it had also drawn shadows. Outside her window, a car rolled slowly past before disappearing into the night. Mira did not see it, but the sense of being watched returned, quiet and steady like a warning. The story of the veteran's truck was not finished. It was only beginning to unfold. The next morning began like any other. Mira opened her garage doors, swept the floor, and prepared her tools for the day. The smell of oil and metal filled the air, steady and familiar. Yet behind the comfort of her routine, unease remained. She kept remembering Tom's words about the convoy, the crate, and the attention his truck had drawn. By mid-morning, customers arrived one after another. A farmer brought in a hay trailer. A delivery driver needed a quick brake check, and a mother asked for help with a stubborn car door. Mira worked with focus, her hands steady, her voice calm. She wanted life to feel normal. Still, she caught herself glancing at the street too often, searching for movement. It was just after lunch when she noticed them again. Across the road, near an old fence, two men stood together. They pretended to talk, but their eyes often drifted toward her garage. One wore a leather jacket, the other a dark cap pulled low. They did not carry tools, and they made no move to approach. They simply watched. Mira's heart tightened, but she forced herself not to show fear. She continued working, tightening bolts and wiping grease as though she had not seen them. Inside, however, her thoughts raced. Were they the same men Officer Dale had warned her about, or new faces drawn by the story of Tom's truck? By late afternoon, Tom arrived in his pickup. The sound of the strong engine calmed her nerves. He parked near the entrance and stepped out, noticing at once the two men across the street. His eyes narrowed. "They're back," he muttered. Mira nodded. "They've been there for hours." Tom leaned against the truck and crossed his arms, his posture firm. The men across the street seemed to notice his presence. After a short while, they walked away, disappearing down the road. Mira exhaled slowly. "They left, but they'll come back." Tom gave her a steady look. "Yes, they will. That's how this works. They test patience, waiting for weakness." Before Mira could respond, Officer Dale's patrol car pulled into the yard. He stepped out and tipped his hat. "Evening. Heard reports of strangers wandering near town. Thought I'd check in." Mira told him about the two men. Dale listened carefully, his face serious. "You did the right thing by staying calm. Don't confront them. If they return, I'll handle it," Tom spoke firmly. "This isn't random curiosity. They're searching." "I know the type," Dale met his eyes. "Then we'll be ready. I'll keep watch near the garage for the next few nights." The officer drove off after his promise, leaving Mira and Tom standing together in the quiet yard. The sun was sinking, painting the sky with streaks of red. Mira felt tired, but she also felt stronger knowing she was not alone. That night, after closing the garage, Mira invited Tom to sit with her on the porch of her small house. They shared tea in silence before Tom finally spoke. "I never told you one more part of the story," he said softly. "The night of the attack, after I drove the crate to safety, one of the officers whispered to me, He said the crate held blueprints, plans for something new. I never saw them and I never asked questions, but he told me I had done more than save supplies. I had saved an idea, something people would chase for years. Mira leaned forward, listening closely. And now those people think you still have it? Tom nodded. Yes, or they think I know where it ended up. But I don't. All I have is this truck, and now they see you as part of the story. Mira's chest tightened. I didn't ask for this, Tom. I just wanted to help. I know, Tom said with regret in his eyes. And I wish I could take the weight back. But trouble has a way of finding people who choose kindness. You stood by me, so now I'll stand by you. The night grew darker and Mira looked down the street. A single car passed slowly before vanishing into the distance. The air felt heavy as if the town itself was holding its breath. She turned to Tom. Then we face it together. If they come, they'll find us ready. Tom gave her a firm nod, his hand resting on the hood of his truck as though it were an old ally. Neither of them knew exactly what was coming, but both understood that shadows were closing in, and soon silence would give way to something more. The next 2 days passed in steady rhythm. Mira kept busy at the garage, fixing engines, changing tires, and greeting neighbors who came with their vehicles. Word of her kindness to Tom had spread far, and people trusted her more than ever. The new tools he had given her made work faster, and her small shop seemed brighter. Yet even with good business, a quiet tension hung in the air. She often looked toward the street, half expecting strangers to appear again. Tom stopped by often, parking his old truck near the garage entrance. He stayed close, watching over her while she worked. His presence gave her comfort. At night, Officer Dale's patrol car could be seen circling the block, a reminder that the law was also near. Still, Mira could not shake the feeling that trouble was only waiting for the right moment. That moment came on a windy night. The sky was cloudy, the moon hidden, and the streets nearly empty. Mira sat at her desk in the small office at the back of the garage, going through receipts. She had stayed late to finish her records. A lantern burned on the desk, casting long shadows on the walls. The sudden creak of the garage door made her freeze. She had locked it hours earlier. Slowly, she rose from her chair and walked toward the sound. The front bay door was still closed, but a side door stood slightly open, its lock broken. Cold air blew through the gap. Mira's heart pounded. She grabbed a wrench from her workbench and held it tight. Stepping softly, she moved through the dim garage. Then she saw him. A man stood near the crate Tom had sent, his hand resting on the engine block inside. He wore a dark jacket and a cap pulled low. His eyes lifted to hers, sharp and alert. "Evening," he said in a low voice. "Didn't mean to scare you." Mira gripped the wrench tighter. "You broke my door. What do you want?" The man smiled faintly. "Not here to steal tools. I'm looking for something else. Something I believe was left in that truck you fixed." Mira's chest tightened. "There's nothing here but parts and tools." "Tom never left anything else," the man tilted his head. "Maybe you don't know. Maybe he didn't tell you. But that truck carried more than supplies years ago. We've been searching a long time, and I think you're closer to it than you realize." Before Mira could answer, headlights swept across the windows. A vehicle pulled into the yard. The man's eyes flicked toward the light. His jaw tightened. "Another time," he muttered, slipping out the side door into the night. Moments later, the rumble of Tom's truck filled the yard. He stepped inside quickly, noticing the broken lock. His eyes moved to Mira, then to the open side door. "What happened?" he asked sharply. Mira set down the wrench, her hands still trembling. "Someone was here. He said he was looking for something left in your truck. He left when you arrived." Tom's face hardened. "It has begun then. They're not just watching anymore. They're moving closer." Mira swallowed, steadying her voice. "He thinks you hid something. Is there more to this story, Tom? Something you didn't tell me?" Tom looked down at the floor, his jaw tight. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he spoke quietly. "I never saw inside that crate, Mira, but there was a second package that night. Small, sealed, handed to me by an officer in the chaos. He told me to guard it no matter what. I did for a time, and then I buried it far from anyone. I thought it was forgotten." Mira's eyes widened. "And now they think you still have it?" "Yes," Tom said. "And if they believe I left it with you, they won't stop until they search every corner of this place?" Mira's hands clenched. Fear pressed at her, but anger also burned. "This is my garage. They don't get to break in and demand answers." Tom gave her a steady look. "Then we must be ready." Tomorrow I'll take you to the place where I buried that package. If it still exists, we need to know. Only then can we decide what comes next." Outside, the wind howled, rattling the loose door. Mira looked at the broken lock, then back at Tom. She knew her life had just crossed another line. What began as a simple act of kindness had become a path leading deeper into shadows. And tomorrow, she would follow it. The next morning arrived with a heavy silence. Mira barely slept after the break-in. She kept hearing the man's words about something hidden in Tom's old truck. Questions filled her mind, but she knew answers would come only if she trusted Tom. He arrived early, his truck idling at the curb. His face was firm, eyes steady. "Ready?" he asked. Mira nodded, locking the garage carefully before climbing into the passenger seat. The truck rumbled onto the road, carrying them away from town. For a while they drove in silence, the landscape changing from small shops to open fields and then to the edge of a wide forest. Finally, Mira spoke. "Tom, what exactly did that officer give you back then?" Tom kept his eyes on the road. "A small wooden box sealed with heavy wax. He said it was important and must not fall into the wrong hands. I was told to hide it, keep it safe until the day came when it was needed. I never asked what was inside. Maybe I did not want to know." Mira frowned. "And you buried it here?" Tom nodded. "Yes, in a place no one would find unless they knew the land well." They left the main road, turning onto a dirt track that wound through thick trees. The morning sun filtered through the leaves, casting shifting shadows across the path. Birds called in the branches and the smell of pine filled the air. At last, Tom parked near a clearing. He stepped out, moving with the slow confidence of someone who had walked this way many times. Mira followed closely, her boots crunching on fallen leaves. They reached a large oak tree at the edge of a stream, its roots twisted out of the soil, gnarled and strong. Tom crouched near the base, brushing away dirt and moss with his hands. "Here," he said softly. "This is where I left it." Mira knelt beside him, helping dig with her hands. The soil was damp, cool against her skin. After a few minutes, her fingers struck something hard. Together, they pulled out a small wooden box, weathered but still whole. The wax seal was cracked but remained mostly intact. Mira stared at it, her heart racing. "This is it?" Tom nodded, his face grave. "Yes, after all these years it is still here." She traced the lid with her fingers. "Should we open it?" Tom hesitated. "Part of me says yes. Another part says it might be safer if we do not. But if others are searching, they already know it exists. We cannot fight shadows if we do not understand them." With steady hands, Mira worked at the cracked seal until the lid loosened. Slowly, she lifted it. Inside lay a bundle of folded papers, old but carefully wrapped in oilcloth to protect them. Beneath the papers rested a small metal badge, tarnished with age, shaped like a shield with an unfamiliar symbol. Mira unwrapped the first paper. The ink had faded, but the writing was clear. It was not an ordinary letter. It looked like instructions marked with strange codes and locations. Another paper carried names and dates, some crossed out, some underlined. "What is this?" Mira whispered. Tom leaned closer, his eyes narrowing. "These are military orders. But not like any I have seen. Some of these names are men I knew, soldiers who never returned. And these codes, they point to places across the country." Mira held up the badge. "And this? What does it mean?" Tom shook his head. "I do not know. But whoever wants this box believes it carries weight. And I fear they will not stop until they hold it." A branch snapped in the distance. Both of them froze. The forest had grown too quiet. Mira's pulse quickened. Tom motioned for her to close the box. "We are not alone," he whispered. From between the trees, faint movement stirred. A dark figure shifted, then another. The sound of careful footsteps moved closer. Mira gripped the box against her chest, her breath shallow. Tom stood, placing himself between her and the sound. His voice was low but strong. "Stay close to me. If they want this, they will have to face us first." The forest seemed to hold its breath as the figures drew nearer, their shapes emerging from the shadows. And Mira realized the secret they uncovered was not just old history. It was something alive and dangerous, and it had now found them. Mira's heart raced as the figures stepped closer, moving through the forest with quiet determination. Shadows stretched long in the dim light, but Tom did not flinch. He placed himself firmly between Mira and the approaching strangers, his hand steady on the truck box. "Stay behind me," Tom whispered. "We can handle this." The first figure stepped into the clearing, revealing a tall man with sharp eyes. "We are not here to hurt you," he said, his voice calm but firm. "We only want to see what is inside that box." Mira clutched the bundle of papers tighter. "Why do you want it?" she asked, her voice trembling. The man glanced at Tom, then back at her. "That box contains information that was lost for decades. Names, locations, and plans that belong to the country. It was hidden for safety. Some people believed it vanished forever, but now it is here and it must be preserved." Tom's eyes narrowed. "And you thought threatening us would help?" The man shook his head. "No, we only needed to make sure the right people have it. That is why we came quietly. You are protecting it, and that is why you are important." Mira exhaled slowly, relief flooding through her. She looked at Tom, who remained tense but alert. "So, it's not dangerous?" she asked. "Not anymore," the man said. "It was important that it be hidden. But now it can be returned to the authorities who can use it correctly." "Your courage kept it safe." Tom nodded slowly. "I only did what I could. Mira helped me. She did not ask for anything, and yet she risked more than she realized." The man stepped closer, his eyes kind. "You both acted with honesty and respect. That is why you were chosen to keep it safe until now." Mira opened the wooden box carefully. The papers and the badge were still intact. She ran her fingers over the old documents, realizing they were more than simple history. They were proof of courage, loyalty, and sacrifice. The man continued. "This information helped plan missions and protect lives. Without it, many things would have been lost. Because of you, it is preserved. It is time to hand it over." Tom looked at Mira. "We should do it together." They followed the man through the forest to a small clearing where another vehicle waited. Officer Dale arrived there as well, his presence reassuring. Mira felt her tension ease. They were not alone. People who could handle the situation were here, and their intentions were honorable. Carefully, Tom handed over the wooden box to the authorities. The man who had approached them checked the papers and the badge, nodding with approval. "Everything is in order. The box will be kept safe and no harm will come to it again." Mira felt a weight lift from her shoulders. Years of secrecy and worry were finally over. The danger that had loomed over the garage and their lives slowly faded. Tom turned to Mira. "You should know, this truck and everything we faced because of it, it was never about danger for us. It was about trust. You proved trust can protect more than just people. It can protect history, values, and honor." Mira smiled, feeling pride and relief. "I only did what was right, and I could not have done it without you guiding me." Officer Dale approached them. "You two were brave and smart. You kept calm, stayed together, and handled the situation well. This town is lucky to have people like you." Tom placed a hand on Mira's shoulder. "Let's go back to the garage. Life will return to normal. Our work isn't over, but at least the shadows have passed." Mira nodded. The road back felt lighter, the sun shining stronger through the trees. The old truck rumbled steadily, carrying them home. They returned to the garage where the tools, engine block, and spare parts waited. Mira ran her hands over them, smiling at the thought that her simple act of kindness had led to something much greater. For the first time in days, she felt safe and proud. She realized that helping someone, even in a small way, could ripple into unexpected and meaningful changes. Tom parked the truck, looking at the garage with appreciation. "This place, your skills and your heart. They matter. Don't ever forget that." Mira glanced at her garage, the sunlight reflecting off the new tools and the polished floors. She knew life would continue, with challenges and surprises ahead. But she also knew she had courage, trust, and friendship to face whatever came next. And as the day grew brighter, Mira smiled. The truck was safe, the secrets were resolved, and the story that had begun with a simple repair had reached its peaceful end. The garage, once quiet and ordinary, now carried a new light. It was a place where honesty, skill, and kindness had changed more than one life.